1. I am a 33-year-old man who went to Japan for a whole month trip. It was half alone and half with friends, exploring various different places. I am okay in Japanese and have been there twice before. However, I can barely read and don't like the thought of being stuck alone in an unknown place. So I limited the far alone in the wild using a bus every 2 hours kind of adventures to a minimum. During the trip, I discovered a cool trip organizer app. Let's call it Clock. Clock is like Booking, but for trips in Japan with reviews, guides, tickets, and groups. I took a trip in Japanese alone and with friends, and we had a blast. I can say that I have no complaints about them when everything works as it should. One day I wanted to go from Nagoya to Shirakawa-go. Kind of 2 or 3 hours each way, and not a fun ride at all. So I found a Chinese day trip and booked it. The reviews said that it's not like the Japanese company, and they do not speak English too much. But I didn't bother to think about it. A day before the trip, they emailed me the details, including the group's sign flag to spot them. I got there and saw the guide tour lady, standing without a flag or any recognition sign on it, which is not the norm in Japan. But I just brushed it aside and went to the bus. Following a 2-hour ride, the tour lady spoke 100% Chinese for 2 hours, and only one other person and I were English speakers in the bus. After this pleasant ride, we stopped at a tourist spot that was like a big gas station and relief center, with a place to take a picture of the mountain. And next to us, there was about 12 different buses of other groups and companies. She stopped her Chinese monologue and told us in English to be back in 15 minutes. I went down and walked a little. Then a vivid thought struck me that I didn't remember our bus's color. But there should be a group sign that she sent us via the email the day before. Everything is going to be okay, right? Right? No. 10 minutes later, I find myself running from bus to bus, asking if they were my group. No sign, no flag, nothing. As the time started reaching the deadline, I started to go back to the main platform and wait for them to spot me. Maybe the tour woman would look at me. About 10 minutes after the deadline, I received a WhatsApp call from the tour woman asking where I am. She announced that she looked for me for a whole 10 minutes, and then they decided to continue. Also, they are on the highway now, can't stop, and I will have to come to the next city by myself and join them alone. I was furious. Just a week before, I went to a trip with a Japanese group. The tour woman held a flag at all times, put another one on the bus, and gave each of us a sticker so we could identify our group. So maybe it's my fault, but I am literally a tourist in an unknown country, and she didn't do the minimum standard required to help. Also, why did she wait 10 minutes and call me only after they left? Why didn't she use her flag? It looks like she wanted to mark it as if she did something and then threw me away. Maybe it's related to the fact that I spoke English, I don't know. I shouted all of this at her and decided that I am not continuing with them. So after that, I find myself in the middle of nowhere with snow-capped mountains around me in this big gas station. Not sure what to do. But thanks to my basic Japanese ability, I managed to explain my situation to the lady who worked there. The cash lady drove me with her car to the next bus station. Bus every 3 hours, and 5 hours from there. I somehow got back to my hotel. After this unpleasant experience, I left a 1-star review on the trip page and told everything to Clock customer service, demanding a refund. Not speaking about the money that I spent to get back on my own. After 2 days of investigation, they said that the tour company sent them a recording of what? And they found them not guilty. But the tour company agreed to come toward me and refund if I would remove the negative review. At the start I didn't want to, but I came to the conclusion that I have some other things to do with an extra $120, and I decided not to be stubborn about it. When I told them to remove it for me, they started asking weird questions, and then I started to doubt their technical abilities to do it. You see, I am a software engineer in a well-known company, and I can spot performance issues when I see them. From the start, their chat was really slow, and looks like they didn't cache their data. A strange thing for such a well-known trip company. Anyway, they asked me to give them the review date and the review type. if it is with or without a picture. Another strange request, since it is my only review and a simple database query can find it. But I rolled with it. After that, they asked me to give them a screenshot of the review itself, so it is clear that they are having some issues locating it. Another few days in, they asked me to give them my bank details. No, they can't refund the transaction, don't ask why, they just need everything to send money directly to my account. At this point, I'm starting to regret that I even talked to them, but I did a final push and their nagging requests end. Today, I entered out of curiosity onto this site and scrolled through the negative reviews to see if anyone else wrote something. Surprisingly, my 1-star review was still sitting there unharmed. Looks like someone failed to delete it miserably and gave up in the end. Also forgot to mention, the bus changed place after putting us down. 2. Growing up, me and my dad didn't have much money. My mom left when I was 4 because she decided she didn't want to have kids. I don't know her actual reason. Anyways, I got my first job when I was 9. My dad had a family friend who owned a car garage. My dad started working there after he had already lost his job. Every day after school, I didn't want to stay with my grandparents, but instead went to the garage. After 10 years of working in my freshman year of college, at this time the garage was doing well. We had 4 establishments, and recently bought a towing company and a scrapyard and combined them. My dad was made assistant manager and helped co-run the company. So after my father, I was the next in charge, which had its downside. It was summer break, and I was working with my co-workers who were like a family to me, because I knew them for so long. It was getting late and we were about to close down. It was only me and 4 others, as some people had left when a family in this Toyota van rolled in. My friend Dave and I greeted them. That is when all hell broke loose. There were 6 people: Karen, Karen's husband, Karen's parents, and her 2 kids. Husband got out to go talk to Dave about the problem with their car, while I offered to take the rest of the family inside to do some basic paperwork. After I sat down at my desk and began to pull out the paperwork, that is when I realized I didn't have car insurance, so I explained what that meant for the repair price. "Of course I know about insurance. I'm older than you." "You know what? I want someone else for this," the Karen said. "Ma'am, it would be easier to stick with me as I am qualified," I said. Boy, she did not like that. She started talking about how I was too young and she wanted a more professional person to do the paperwork with. Me being me, I said my education and experience are on par with most of the other staff, whose age ranges are 30 to 50. "I want your manager. They can get me someone qualified," the Karen yelled. "Ma'am, the manager and assistant manager is not here. I can get someone else, though, if you quiet down," I said. Karen was actually so loud that her husband had to take the kids down the road to the local ice cream shop to distract her kids, as the grandparents were at a thrift shop away from their daughter. As I pretended to walk away and sent Dave to pretend to be more qualified personnel, I put on my associate manager badge and walked back in, and Dave stood up and walked away. "Hello, I am, to be honest, zero clue. I am the associate manager. How can I help you?" I said. Luckily, before she can blow out my eardrums, her husband came in and apologized for her behavior and took over the rest of the interaction. I wouldn't say it was one of the best days, but to me it kinda was, because after they left, my significant other came in with a busted tire. That was the day I met them, and after I graduated college and got a job, we were married. Fun fact, her husband is bisexual and was my boyfriend for a few years. We were friends after we broke up and texted each other. We didn't get together, but he got me and my husband together. 3. I am from England, London to be exact, and I can count on one hand how many times I've eaten in a restaurant that allowed the customer to pay after they had eaten. I never really understood why any place wouldn't make you pay up front to avoid dine and dash. I mean, I get the idea for expensive restaurants. They don't want you looking at your bill until you're finished, so they can make the most money, but for smaller places, it never made sense. Today I chose just such an establishment, completely by chance. So I ate, I drank, and then I called the waitress over for the bill. When she came, she held out a card reader that had over double the amount it should have been. I looked at the card reader in complete panic, did the math over in my head, and knew I was being overcharged. So at first I thought it was a mistake, and I said as much. The waitress turned the card reader towards herself, looked it over, looked at the receipts she had in her hands, and with a little shake of her head she said, "No, there's no mistake. This is your table." So I told her I didn't order nearly as much as they were trying to charge me for, and after she insisted again that the bill was correct, I got out my phone, opened the calculator, a godsend I swear, typed in the price of everything I had ordered, and showed her the total. The waitress then gave me a strange look and said something like, "Right, I know. The woman who was sitting over there ordered the other stuff." And I was just like, what? I must have looked as baffled as I felt, because the waitress became visibly antsy and told me that a woman who had been sitting at another table she had left by then had apparently just pointed at me and told the girl I would be paying for her meal. And the waitress just accepted this? Without checking with me, without making sure she wasn't lying, without anything. I swore out loud, and I told her I did not agree to pay for anyone's meal, and she should have definitely asked me beforehand instead of just blindly trusting this random woman. The waitress then huffed and was like, "Well, she already left, so what now?" I just looked at her dumbly before telling her that I didn't care what she did, but I sure as hell wasn't paying for this random lady's meal. Then she glared at me, like actually glared, before telling me she was going to get her manager and running off. I just sat there in stunned silence, completely baffled by how anyone could be so stupid, and how something like this could happen outside of some movie, because I definitely felt like I was on a prank show. So then the manager comes back with the waitress, who is still glaring like I murdered her puppy, and I explain the situation as best I can to him, even though I thought the whole thing was ridiculous. I thought for sure he was going to be on my side and agree that this was total BS. But the man actually stands there for a solid minute, just thinking before turning to me and saying, "Well, I apologize for the inconvenience, but would you mind paying anyway? We are a small, family-run restaurant after all. We can't afford to feed people for free." Jesus, I swear I could not have felt more confused if you paid me. I just sat there. I couldn't even talk. Like, did he really just say that to me? And after realizing that he was 100% serious, and if I wasn't assertive enough in that moment, I was definitely going to be taken for a ride, I told him bluntly that I would not be paying for someone else's meal, and to remove the woman's items from my bill so I could pay and leave. I swear this grown-arse man who looked over twice my age gave me puppy-dog eyes. He seriously looked so sad that I had refused his ridiculous proposal, before taking the bill from the girl and walking away without a word. The waitress glared one last time before chasing after him. He returned a moment later with the card reader that had a new total, and you best believe I triple-checked it before allowing my card to be charged. He then mumbled, "I hope you enjoyed your meal," before scampering off, and I just stared at him before gathering my coat and bag and booking it out of the place. But oh my God! Has this ever happened to anyone else? Were they trying to scam me? Or do you think that waitress was really so stupid that she let a random customer scam her? I honestly don't know what to think. The whole experience was so surreal, I'm half expecting that the next time I pass the place, it will be some abandoned storefront with no signs of life, because it never really existed, and the whole thing was just some wacky hallucination I made up in my head. 4. Before you make a comment to put on a badge or my work uniform, please listen to the entirety of this post, if you care. For context, I work at a middle school as a para-educator, and my supervisor, special ed coordinator, and assistant principal would ping-pong me between special ed and gen ed. I was mistaken as a student during the first month working, since I didn't get my work badge until a month after picture day. Towards the end of the school year, I stopped wearing it since the staff are familiar with me. I'm 5'3" and an elder Zoomer, 25-year-old female. The students have colored hair and so do I. They wear uniforms, but baggy dickies are in. Some of the students look older than me because of how they do their makeup. I love wearing my dark cargo pants, and sometimes the campus aides would have to do a double take when they see me to make sure it wasn't a student ditching class. Recently, they hired new campus aides, and one of them keeps thinking I'm a student. She would ask for a hall pass when I'm on my breaks. She didn't believe me for her first week there because, "You're so short. You look young. You try too hard to look younger than you are." My "I do work here" moment was when I was on my way to sign in at the front office. Homegirl was going to make a beeline towards me until my supervisor intersected and needed to speak to me briefly. After she decided to be a big bitch and asked me who that was, and I told her that was the big boss and needed me to cover for another para. She let up after that, and we haven't spoken since. Yeah, so, the badge. I started wearing it since we got back from our break. We have new ones now, cause the staff ones look exactly like the students, so there's staff under our pick in bold. We have a new admin here that just started, so now everyone has their badges now. The aide was a December hire, but now it's January and she's not back. A question I've been seeing more frequently is, why don't you put more effort into looking professional so it doesn't happen? As I've mentioned, I'm also a special ed para. For this job position, you don't need to put in a lot of effort into dressing nice because of the physical aspects of the job. It can get really dirty since I'm tasked with toileting, so it's encouraged to dress more casually rather than business casual and teacher core. There are also staff who do not dress business casual and have colored hair, piercings, and tattoos, so it seems like I was probably singled out by the campus aide. The aide. She was a December hire but ended up quitting. Heard through the grapevine from one of the other campus aides that she's been blatantly clapping back at students and also mistaken another staff, also a fellow para, as a student. As far as I know, she made a student cry, and that led to a parent coming to the school and wanting to intervene. She was supposed to go through the school's disciplinary process after getting written up, but given that she hasn't shown up to work without putting in a notice, she basically abandoned her job and quit. 5. So in the mid-90s, I started working for a cow-themed computer company in the Midwest. Holiday season 1996, sales went nuts because they were first to market with an internal 28.8K modem, to the point that us poor schmucks on phone tech support were working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks to try to keep the hold time down to 2 hours or less. Also, it should be noted, we used to send out a VHS tape. You Gen A's that hear this, ask your parents what VHS is. But had to discontinue that earlier in the year, when someone at the video production company decided to splice adult material into the setup video. So no more VHS tapes being sent out. A lot of the calls had to do with setup, how to connect the monitor, keyboard, mouse, even though the back of the computer was color-coded. But still, computers as household items were still relatively new, and a lot of hand-holding, old people trying to figure out that complicated AOL. Maybe someone actually has a problem. All in all, pretty easy money. Enter the dad on the line. "Hello, thanks for calling Cow Computers. My name is Old Fat Man. Could I—"
"What in the fuck are you doing? How in the hell can you send out that computer with that on there?"
So he continues to scream for the next 10, but felt way longer, minutes. He finally calms down. "Well, I'm sorry to hear you're having issues with your computer. Let's see what we can do." So I get his information. Okay, so what software was on the computer?
"It's not the software. I went to try out AOL, and all of a sudden, when I typed in the browser, it was showing adult sites. Is that some kind of weird joke you guys do there? I remember you guys were sending out dirty tapes to people."
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. The tapes were a third-party company, and we fired them and destroyed any tapes. Then I hear a voice in the background. Dad, I'm headed out for a bit.
Okay, Brad, just wait a minute.
Mind if I ask you a question? How old is your son?
Oh, he's 14.
So I decide that this is the time to lead him down the path. So like I said, I'm sorry that showed up on your computer, but when we build your system, it's never attached to a live phone line to test the modem. I'll talk you through what to do. So at this point, I talked him through opening a DOS shell and introducing a debug command to run a self-test on the modem. And he hears that lovely sound we all know so well in the 90s and early 2000s. Line goes silent, but you can hear his wheels turning. So you said your son is 14. Was he on the computer last night?
Why, yes, he said he had some... Oh my God, I'm so sorry for yelling at you like that. You didn't deserve it.
I'm grinning evilly by this point, and I'm at 45 or so minutes into the call. My manager swings by asking if all's okay, and I wave him away. At this point, I'm hearing in the background on the call,
Get over here, Brad. I just spent time yelling at this guy when you were looking at titties under my roof. You're gonna get on that phone and apologize to him.
So this kid, he knows he's busted, and busted bad, so to speak. Meekly apologizes for looking at what he was looking at, and I'm just trying to keep from laughing out loud at this point. But there was a bit more yelling that I couldn't make out. But it did sound like Mom joined in on the berating. Dad gets back on the phone.
Once again, I'm so sorry that I acted that way to you. I shouldn't have sworn or yelled at you.
You did what?
Says Mom in the background. At that point, the phone hangs up and I have my manager pull the call. There are a lot of people that have to listen to it just for the humor aspect of the call. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 153. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button, and share the video with anyone you know named Lionel. Okay, let's see. Oh yes, if you'd like to get early access to the videos, then you can support me on my Patreon, which is linked in the description. You'll also find a link to the Hellfreezer merchandise store to get yourself that sweet Hellfreezer merchandise. I love it. But I did design it, so don't take my word. Go see yourself. And if you especially enjoyed today's video, why not leave a tip? You can do that by clicking on the heart with a $sign just below the video and select the tip of your choice. And you don't have to do that, but I appreciate it if you choose to. Okay. Right, no other business, I don't think, unless someone gets a birthday shout-out in after I've recorded this, but we're all good. And if you do have shout-out, send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. Then in the description, it's on the screen. It's probably in other places, but those are the easiest ones right now. And I'll do my best to fit it into a future video. And now let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question and answer of the day. And today's question is... This one comes from Newcomb on the Discord. What type of 19th century clothing would you want to come back into common use? That's easy for me. I quite like frock coats. But you don't really see them these days, and I think they look quite nice. So yeah, they come back into common use, I'd definitely rock a frock coat. And I would phrase it like that every time I put it on. Why don't you let me know what your answers are in a comment below. And before we go, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And this is in relation to what is the most eerie sound you've ever heard. And this answer comes from J. Nokomis. Ooh, I hope one of those is correct, Jay. I do apologize if I'm mangling that. One morning, I was woken to a pitiful whining of a puppy outside my bedroom window. It sounded so desolate and hopeless, as though it knew it would never receive the help it needed. I got up and could hear this whining as I got dressed. My room was right off the front door, the windows next to the door, and I could see clearly the area this puppy would have been, as I had not yet landscaped it. There was no puppy, no animal of any kind. Such a heartbreaking sound, and I could not help it. Well, I think I know what was causing that. That sounds very much like the sound of a fox. They tend to make sounds like they sound like a crying kind of sound. I remember one night, and I didn't cite this as the creepiest sound I had heard because I eventually rationalized this is what it was. I heard what sounded like a child crying, somewhat near my house, but a little bit off in the distance perhaps. And I was actually recording, I was working at the time, I was recording paranormal stories, so it wasn't a very nice sound to hear at the time when I was doing that. I wasn't in the headspace for it. I thought, okay, so I threw on my jeans and I went out late at night trying to find this crying child that needed help. Only to not find anything, but eventually came to the conclusion that it was indeed a fox. Because they like to do that sort of thing. They're kind of massive trolls, really. Foxes is what they are. So hopefully that's all the sound was, just a mischievous fox, in both of our cases. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, and thank you very much for your answer. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.